Journeying into adulthood, youth identities and subcultures. Becoming an adult involves moving out of the social structures children are positioned within and situating oneself or being situated within some of the social structures that adults occupy. For instance, children usually live in the household of their parents or carers, who are considered to have responsibility for the children. In the UK, moving out of the parental home is often considered a sign of adulthood, although this by no means a universal opinion or possibility. As the chapter will explore further, but becoming an adult is not just a matter of fitting into new social structures, it is also considered a time in which people find or solidify their individual and group identities. Moreover, the role of the peer group is young people's lives also plays a significant role in the creation of personal identities and subcultural formations. For example, skinheads, punk rockers, rave culture, and street-based youth cultures, which can be viewed as individualized and collective responses to the expectations and responsibilities of adulthood. The work of the Centre for Contemporary Cultural Studies at the University of Birmingham in the 1970s had a major impact on the development of youth studies, specifically academic understanding of subcultures and deviance, under the stewardship of sociologist and cultural theorist Professor Stuart Hall. The CCCS, through a number of landmark studies, sought to analyse and understand the relationship between culture and society by focusing in equal measure on the symbolic as well as the social subcultures and style. As such, the CCCS researchers emphasised how the rituals and symbols associated with the subcultures of working class youth as distinct to those of the parent working class culture were used as ways to resist dominant middle class or ruling elite culture. The UK had long been a country defined by its rigid social class structure, and this was most certainly the case during the decades following the Second World War, which has, for many generations of young people, been transmitted through and distinguished by education, language, leisure activities, culture, family life, and occupational careers. For example, young working class males, on leaving school at 15, were expected to follow their fathers in obtaining manual jobs like coal miners and dock workers. These young men were also expected to share the same cultural pursuits as their fathers by spending their leisure time down the pub and or attending football or rugby matches on a Saturday afternoon. CCCS researchers challenged these perspectives by demonstrating how, via the creation of their own subcultures, working class young people were able to resist these dominant societal, cultural, and economic norms. Resistance through rituals. The work of researchers at the CCCS is best illustrated by their landmark edited collection, Resistance Through Rituals. With the utilisation of the ethnographic research methods, Resistance Through Ritual includes studies examining the subcultures of teddy boys, mods, punk rockers, skinheads, and street corner culture. The subcultural response, we can return now to the question of subcultures, working class subcultures, we suggested take shape on the level of the social and cultural class relations of the subordinate classes in themselves. They are not simply ideological constructs. They too win space for the young, cultural space in the neighbourhood and institutions, real time for leisure and recreation, actual room on the street or street corner. They serve to mark out an appropriate territory in the localities. They focus around key occasions of social interaction: the weekend, the disco, the bank holiday trip, the night out in the centre, and standing about doing nothing of the weekday evening. The Saturday match. They cluster around particular locations in addressing the class problematic of the particular strata from which they were drawn. The different subcultures provide for a section of working class youth, mainly boys, one strategy for negotiating their collective existence, but their highly ritualized and stylized form suggests that they were also attempts at a solution to the problematic experience. Although contemporary youth studies is greatly indebted to the pioneering work of the CCCS in recent years, their research has been criticized for a narrow interpretation of subculture, which tended to be theorized solely in relation to youth and social class. The CCCS was also criticized for its fixation upon the spectacular styles and subcultures of working class heterosexual white males, at the expense of researching the everyday and mundane activities of girls and Black, Asian, and minority ethnic youth. Also in the 1990s, prominent sociologists began to argue that in recent decades, societies in the global north had changed significantly, especially in terms of how the individual relates to dominant societal, cultural, and economic structures. Collectively, these late modern theorists, such as Ulrich Beck, Anthony Giddens, and Zygmunt Bauman, have varying perspectives on social change, but they all argue, to some extent, the modern society is increasingly characterized by risk and uncertainty in the realm of relationships between individuals and the place of the individual within society. They see traditional social division, such as social class and gender, as less important in shaping paths in life and determining identity and belonging. German sociologist Ulrich Beck argued that we are moving from normal biographies where our roles and life plans are predetermined, defined by tradition and social institutions, to choice biographies where we are free to choose who we are and what we become. The individual is thus considered responsible for everything that happens to them. The concept that Beck calls individualization. Notwithstanding the late modern theorizing of individualization, risk, uncertainty, and the importance of consumerism to young people's identity creation, ethnographic research studies have challenged these perspectives. They highlight the continuing significance of place, social class, and race in young people's lives. In addition to ethnographic youth studies, scholars also argue that traditional divisions, such as those of social class and gender, are still influential in shaping the experiences and possibilities of young people, even if they now do so in different ways. Some researchers studying young people's experiences, education, and identities draw on the work of the theorist Pierre Bourdieu to understand how social inequalities are reproduced from one generation to the next via the important concepts of social capital, your friends, network, and social connections, and cultural capital, as discussed in Chapter 7. Cultural capital refers partly to the knowledge and skills acquired through education and formal schooling, and also to ideas and cultural ideologies. The forms of capital are linked in the sense that those with more economic capital tend to have higher levels of cultural and social capital as well. A child of wealthy parents, for instance, may be sent to elite private school, be encouraged by family, school, and friends to go to a sophisticated cultural events, art galleries, and concerts, mix with people of a similar background, or find internships and, in due course, jobs in elite companies. This means that young people's options, chances, and choices as they move into adulthood are influenced by their background, not just because of money, but also because of other resources. Key points. Moving into adulthood involves becoming situated in new social structures, which include education and/or work. It is important that we don't underestimate young people's agency and their attempts to resist larger social and economic structures via the creation of individualized and group-based identities and subcultures. Late modern theorists argue that modern societies in the global north are categorized by uncertainty, that divisions like social class are less important influences than in the past, and the individualization categorizes this age. Ethnographic studies find that place, race, and social class continue to be important in young people's lives.